What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to be replacing the peeling chrome handles in the Prelude with some fresh ones. In addition, I'm going to be swapping a black lock button in for a little bit cleaner look. So with that said, let's get right to it. So since I already did the passenger side, I'm going to walk through the process of getting the driver's side out. Now you can remove the entire door panel or just remove the handle assembly itself, which is super easy and is what I recommend doing. That said, get it out, you need to pop the cap open that you see here behind the handle, and once that cap is open, there's a Phillips head screw that's behind it that needs to be removed. Once that screw is out, just grab on the handle assembly, pull it back slightly and outward to release 3 hooks that are located on the back of the assembly that hook into the metal door skin. Once the back hooks are undone, you'll see this little clip right here that holds the push rod in place. Using a small screwdriver, go ahead and pop that clip off the rod and lift the rod out of the handle. Doing so will now free the handle up to allow you to slide that handle the rest of the way out of the door panel. The front portion of this assembly is held in by 2 metal push clips on the top and bottom of the assembly. Once you see the wiring on the back side, all you now have to do is unplug the lock button and the tweeter and you're good to go. So now that we have the assembly removed from the car, we need to get the old handle off. And to do that, you got to remove this pin right here. But to do that, you also have to unflare the flared edge of this pin in order to tap it back through the housing and the spring. Now you can use pliers, vice grips, or whatever it might be that you have that will fit in the area to use to squeeze the flared area of the pin back into a round shape to be able to pass it through the assembly holes. Once the pin is pushed back through and the spring can be removed, make sure to take a mental note of how the spring goes into the assembly. Putting it back in correctly will ensure that the handle is under the correct tension in order for the handle to function properly. The spring goes in with the small tip resting on this little plastic perch and the longer end pointing outward and away from the housing. That said, with the pin the rest of the way out of the assembly, now we can remove the old handle and the spring and replace it with a better conditioned one. Now in order to do the replacement, I have 2 different options for you that you can use depending on how picky you might be with the final fitment of the handle. The first option I have for you is a set of eBay replacement handles made for a 94 to 97 Accord. Now you can get these on eBay for around $10 to $14 for the set, but they don't offer perfect fitment like the OEM handles do. But what they do have going for them is they do come with a replacement rod holder, as you can see here, and a screw cap in the event that yours is gone. You simply pop that sucker out and it'll go right back into your Prelude cover with no issues. Now, like I said, there are some issues with fitment on these handles. And the issues are, the handle doesn't quite feel of the same quality and it does not sit in the handle cup in the same way the factory handles do. So as you can see here, the Prelude handle sits flush with the body of the cover, but the eBay handle, it sits a little bit deeper into the handle cup by about 1/4 inch. And that's because the area in this region of the handle isn't as thick as the OEM handle is. I'm going to say when they produced this handle, they didn't make it to the exact spec, and as a result, the handle doesn't quite fit in the correct position. Now, if this doesn't bother you, being off about 1/4 inch, these are a good value. You can replace them relatively quick and be good to go. Now, the second option I have is a little more time consuming, but it does offer better fitment. That would be going to a junkyard or going on eBay again and sourcing a set of used 4-door 94 to 97 Accord handles. Now, I mentioned 4-door because you're going to want to look at the rear handles particularly. Now, when I was searching through the junkyard, I realized that a lot of the Accords, the rear handles were in much better condition than the fronts were. And I'm just going to say that's because they weren't used quite as often. Another thing that the trim handles for the junkyard Accords have in their favor is you can find them in a black trim level, and you will be able to use the screw caps if they are present on yours as well. Since I already had screw caps, I went ahead and bought a brown set instead. Now, I did pay $22 for this set, so it will cost a little more, but they also come with black switches that we'll be using to work with later on in the process to switch the chrome piece out. So before I get into that, I'm going to go ahead and rip this apart so I can get this handle swapped over to the new one and then move into the lock switch. So now that I have the new handle out, all I need to do now is put it back into the Prelude assembly, reinsert the guide pin, place the spring back in, and then press the guide pin back through the rest of the way. Now in reference to the guide pin, you can either reuse your Prelude pin, the Accord pin, or the eBay pin that came with that set. Either one will work fine. That said, I recommend using one of the OEM Honda pins because they feel to be of better quality than the eBay pin that came with those handles. So once the pin's in position, place the handle back in, compress the spring down into the correct position, and push the pin back through the assembly. Once everything's back together and the handle functions as it's supposed to, you can now use pliers to either pull the flared metal back out to make the flare, or you can press down on the flare with a Phillips head screwdriver and rotate slightly to flare that pin back out again. Reflaring the pin will ensure that the pin doesn't come out later and cause your handle to fall off the assembly. So with all that done, the button is something I was excited about because since mine were both peeling, I needed a way to replace them. Now I did get lucky, and I found replacement switches that weren't peeling from a Prelude in a junkyard. But I wasn't quite happy with the chrome. And when I realized that the chrome and the black switches from the Accord were just caps for the switch, and that they came off and were interchangeable, that's when I got thinking. In order to get these caps off, you need to go ahead and yank them off the switch. Now, for the chrome cap, I just went ahead and yanked it off because I'm not going to be using it again. But for the black cap, I made sure to wrap it in tape, so that way when I pulled it off with the pliers, I didn't scratch the surface. Once it's removed, all you need to do is basically hit the black switch cap with a heat gun in order to soften the plastic up just a little bit. And with light finger pressure, press those wings on the back of the switch cap inward to make the general width of the cap slightly narrower than it was before. In its original shape, when you insert the cap onto the switch and place it back in the assembly and attempt to utilize the lock, it'll get stuck in either the up or down position and cause the switch to jam. But as you can see, after heating it and pressing slightly in on those wings, I can narrow the switch cap just enough to reinstall, insert, and it function properly. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and slap this back in, screw it back down, and give it a test. And just like that, it's reinstalled, works perfectly, and looks absolutely awesome. Now, before we put these back in the car, last thing I want to mention is the ability to reuse your old handles by stripping the peeling chrome off of them using a small screwdriver and a razor blade. Now, if you can't get all the chrome off, I have been told that you can soak chrome pieces in a container with 1 part bleach and 2 parts hot water for around 6 to 8 hours, and that'll help either make the chrome brittle to be removed, or it will dissolve the chrome coating entirely. I didn't have to test that because mine came off with a razor blade. I plan to prep these, spray them black, hit them with either a satin or a matte clear, and then probably put them right back in the car to remove the chrome out of here completely. And then I'll be pretty content with this for now. So now these are all done, and the new handles are in, and that sweet black lock switch is installed, go ahead and throw these back in the car, and then close out the video. So if you're watching this and you found it helpful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want to continue to follow along with the Prelude or the Q50, and I will see you all on the next one.